Latarian Milton is not your typical 7-year-old. Few his age have ever driven an SUV up and down several busy streets. It all started at his mother's townhouse. Latarian says he took the car keys and hopped into his grandmother's Dodge Durango.
When I came through the back door, I looked on the counter, my keys were gone.
I took my grandma car because I got mad at my mom, and then I suddenly had my friend come in, and he smokes with cigarettes.
He started the vehicle and put it into gear.
I yanked the thing.
And off they went. 2 7-year-olds alone on the road. Latarian drove several miles through Lake Park and Palm Beach Gardens.
We got the one call that I told you about of a driver in the vehicle who looked too short to be able to see over the steering wheel.
Along the way, he ran over 2 mailboxes, hit 2 parked cars in a Costco parking lot, and struck 2 moving cars near Walmart.
I want to do it because it's fun. It's fun to do bad things. Drive into a car.
But did you know that you could perhaps kill somebody?
Yes, but I wanted to do HoodRats stuff with my friend.
It's right there at the end, Brigitte. Right there is a very clear and convincing reason why I got involved in this case. It's fun to do bad things, right? And when you said nobody could talk about this and you started going after journalists, I was like, I don't know, it's fun to do bad things. I don't want to do HoodRats stuff with my friends in the basement.
Whoa, hold up. Did the president and the first lady boy of France just take out a political hit on Candace Owens? Well, that's what she's claiming. And let's face it, here in 2025, if we've learned anything, it's that anything is possible and may actually happen. So let's talk about it. Welcome back to Justice for All, guys. I am Aaron Justice. So, what happened here? No one really knows for sure. Even Miss O doesn't know exactly what's going on. All we can talk about is what we have, which is not very much at this point, but we'll have to try to make some deductions from the very little that we had. So, for anyone that hasn't seen these tweets and whatnot that maybe, or maybe they've forgotten little bits, we'll just do a brief recap of what has actually kind of transpired, and then we'll get into, a little bit of the meat on why this even matters. On November 22nd, 2025, Candace Owens posted publicly that a high-ranking official from the French government allegedly contacted her, warning that the heads of state, a powerful couple in France, meaning Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron, the president and first lady, had approved a contract for her assassination. She claims the plot involves an elite tactical unit plus foreign operatives. Now, she says she has informed U.S. federal authorities and that there's alleged money, there's a trail of it, she has proof of this, and she is fully prepared to supply names, and that this money trail, or that it is come to be known that it's 1.5 million somehow to her. And in response, the story has exploded, of course, across media and social media platforms, and she even suspended her own #1 podcast in America show all of last week. As of this recording, this is Sunday before beginning the next week. However, and this detail is important, no independent authority, no official government source, or credible evidence has been publicly verified in any part of this assassination claim. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That only means that no one has stepped forward in a professional manner to give any kind of legitimacy to these claims whatsoever. Now, okay, so since she dropped this on the 22nd, there, of course, has been just an eruption of fire across social media, particularly X or Twitter, whatever people call it now.
They didn't get the fucking money. They're gonna kill that poor woman. They're gonna kill that poor woman.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth, a lot of people sticking up for her, that believe her, that know and understand the heaviness of what this claim represents. And then, of course, there are antagonist people that are coming against her, critics and skeptics. Some are just average, everyday people who think she's lost it, They just straight up don't like her. Some of them are on the right and the left, and both the left and the right have issues with Candace Owens now. So some of it is coming from, partisanship. Some of it is coming from people that just do not like conspiracy theories or conspiracy theorists, There's a little bit coming from everywhere, it seems. But what is most important to take a look at is the usual suspects, the people that she said would be coming after her, and how and why they are coming after her. But first, let's go back just a little bit and try to garner an understanding of how did we get here? How do we get to a place where an entire government, a country, is essentially committing what could be an act of war against a single citizen in a different country? I mean, this is insane. This is crazy, obviously, if it's true. So, how did we get here? Well, we got to go back to spring of 2024, when Candace Owens, in her segment on her show that is Through the Daily Wire, she starts talking to certain people that start bringing in different perspectives on the situation concerning Israel and Gaza and the Palestinian people. Now, up until then, she, of course, being a right-wing conservative, took the right-wing conservative stance, which is we're pro-Israel all the way, da-da-da, and that's just the way that it is. That's the way we are. Case closed. Well, like this event, like this G-side did for a lot of people, she began to see footage. She began to investigate things on her own. She began to listen to some of the intelligent and well-respected voices from the other side. And because of her new faith within Catholicism, and also, I think, being a mother of 3 at the time and now 4 children, her views have changed a little bit. She has what she claims to be this all-new commitment to capital T truth, whatever that may be. And there's just something about watching children be slaughtered and killed in the arms of their mothers and their families that really kind of hits to the heart of a mother, I think. So she began to speak about it. And of course, there were certain people, it's the Daily Wire after all, that didn't like her changes of opinion and maybe perhaps suggested that she wasn't the best fit for their very conservative, very pro-Israel, very Zionist outfit at the Daily Wire, and she was unceremoniously let go. She then popped up a few months later in the early summer of last year, 2024, with her own show on YouTube, because of course she would. Why wouldn't she? She has a massive audience. She garnered a massive audience at Daily Wire and TPUSA and all the Blexit and things that she did before. So of course she's going to go do her own thing. Megyn Kelly does it. They all do it. And why not? It's there. So she does. And immediately people could see that away from the Daily Wire, it was a different Candace. It was a different show altogether. Not saying that, she was putting on this act over here. I mean, trust, a lot of people still, of course, don't like her at all, and that's completely in their right, and that's fine. But you could tell that there was more of an air of authenticity about her, even as she was covering these bombastic stories. And that's what Candace is good at. She's good at the wild, bombastic nature of things and going in and getting to these stories and looking at them, presenting these other points of view. I mean, we all remember the Kanye time. So that's what she does. And she does it well. And she garnered quite a bit more people as the weeks and the months continue to roll on. Then, of course, when the entire Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and that whole mess came out, she hopped on that train for a little bit, hopping on the right side of history on that particular issue, I believe, and siding with Justin Baldoni and what was an obvious, horrendous shakedown in Hollywood. That's neither here nor there with this story, but it's to point out that she kept adding viewers with each subject she tackled, and she tackled them well. They were very informative. This, of course, leads us straight into February of 2025, when she unleashed what may be her most controversial and largest and most comprehensive work yet, the Becoming Brigitte series. This, of course, is a series about the First Lady of France and how that First Lady may not be a, how should we say, natural-born female at all. This, of course, is not news around the world, so to speak. It's new to us, a lot of us as Americans, but it's not new throughout places in Europe and especially in France. This is because a journalist by the name of Xavier Poussard had already done this series in book format. He already came through and did this investigative journalism series on this matter, on this issue. That's how Candace Owens found out about it. And of course, she reached out to him, spoke with him, met with him, traded information back and forth, and in tandem with him, created the series, the book that he wrote on this subject, into her own investigative video YouTube series. Now, when I sat down for this, I, like many people, was like, okay, like, what is this? Like, really? What's going on here? But also, like most people, by the end of it, it's pretty compelling. Gotta give it to the girl. It's really compelling, actually. And so, of course, this series has had staying power. Staying power manifested into millions of views and hundreds of thousands of new followers that came and watched the series and stuck around for the episodes that she did in between and around the series. And people started coming back and tuning in more. I was one of those people, but I had already been one of those people when I checked in at the beginning of her show and the release. I checked in not as particularly as a fan, to be honest. I was checking in out of curiosity to see, specifically because I was very interested in her about turn concerning Israel and Gaza. And I was impressed with it because I wasn't really a fan of hers before, to be honest, for a few different reasons, not just policy, but things that she has done and said in the past. We won't get into here. It doesn't matter anyway. But her turn on that particular issue was very impressive and sudden, and it seemed like it came out of nowhere. And it was rather unbelievable at the time, because nobody in the right wing was saying things like this at that time, except for the outcast like Nicholas Fuentes. Those two, of course, would later meet on her show months later. That's a different subject. But for this, Becoming Brigitte blows up all across the world. She now has fans, not just in America, not just in France, all over Europe, in Asia, in Russia, Africa. Fans are writing in from all over the world talking about this story and going crazy over it. So much so that, of course, this became a point of contention with Emmanuel Macron and the First Lady, Brigitte Macron. And they were, understandably upset about it. And so Candace did actually reach out to them to ask them questions. She sent, a questionnaire and even told them, hey, I will take down this story. I will stop investigating. I'll stop talking about it if you just give me the simple proof, proof that you are who you say you are. You are indeed a natural-born female, and you grew up a female and had these children naturally, etc., etc. Just, pictures from that time. Pictures from you as a teenage girl, as a little girl, you as a young mother, picture, delivery room with your children. You should have those as a natural-born woman that was rearing children, right? You should have those. But they didn't. They didn't provide any of the smallest, very tangible, reasonable artifacts of evidence. Instead, they end up suing her, of course, for defamation. But there's also some other things tossed in as well, like some claims that she's saying that there is some incest going on, and there's international espionage, and so I realize that this sounds crazy right now, and to be fair, it is crazy, I get that, but if you go watch the series, you'll understand that, yes, while crazy, all of this is somehow comes together and makes sense, as if that's the world we're living in now, or it's the world that we've always lived in. It's just that now we're going through the revelation of truths. We're going through an awakening to seeing things that we didn't see before, understanding things in a brand new way. What is hidden is brought up to the surface. I talk about these very things in the trailer to this channel before this kind of madness even started happening, because we've been waiting for this for a long time. And the time is now. That's what makes this case and so many others that are happening in politics, in Hollywood, across the globe, parts of Africa, certainly Israel, Gaza, most Ukraine, Europe. There are massive upheavals happening all across the globe. And this is coming just a couple of years after the first time in our known history that we as a globe have come together to fight a common enemy. That was the COVID-19 era. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in unprecedented times. That is for sure. And this case, this Charlie Kirk assassination, slaying, execution, is one of the most important aspects of this journey, of this quest that we are all on in growing and learning. And the reason why it's so important is what's at stake, and also what the real implications are. But let's get back. The Macrons. They bring suit because earlier in the year, in the spring, Emmanuel Macron went to President Donald Trump and said, "Hey, do you know this Candace Owens?" And he was confused, said, "Yeah, I know Candace." "Well, can you tell her to stop talking about the First Lady, boy? I mean, the First Lady is very embarrassing." That's terrible, but it's what it is. And of course, Trump was a little confused about it. But he did. He called Candace. And this was after a figure that she kept secret had called and told her that the president wanted her to stop. Then she got a call from the president himself. And then this suit. Now, that little detail is important because most of us had a suspicion of who that hidden secret person was that called her to try to warn her and tell her or ask her. And she didn't reveal it until after his execution, that that person was indeed Charlie Kirk, as many of us suspected. So yeah, they were still friends. They were still very much friends. For people out there that are trying to say otherwise. Not true. This happened way before his death. So, taking her to court. Then comes the suit. A lot of money at stake. But I also think it's a sham suit. The reason being, it's a suit of defamation. Why does that make it a sham? Because, as of now, in America, we still have free speech rights. And France, no matter if it's President Emmanuel Macron, does not have the right to come over here and take rights from an American citizen. Even if, and maybe especially if they're saying things he doesn't like. In their defense, this is pretty bad, and very destructive for them, seeing as how most people that watch this series actually believe it. But that aside, it's damaging, it's hurtful. Sure, it's embarrassing, humiliating. But this is also the guy that touched down and opened the door of a plane to have his wife literally punch him in the face to the public, to the cameras. And he turned around and tried to do the little goofy wave, like, oh, dude, you guys, nothing to see here. After Jean-Michel Trogneau clocked him in the jaw on the plane. Like, that's not helping, man. That's not helping the case here. I digress. Defamation in America, very hard to prove because you have to prove the intent of malice. Meaning, you have to prove that Candace Owens maliciously said these things to harm you. And what that means is that she knew that these were false statements and she said them with the intent of malice to defame. That's why defamation is very hard to win in this country. And that's why most people try to settle out of court and not have it go that far. You know, this was the whole reason that the Johnny and Amber Heard thing was such a massive dust-up, because Johnny had good reason and proof to show defamation. And he had, at that time, the money to do it. And he wasn't doing it. He was doing it to win his name and his reputation back. So the going to court and his bringing cameras into the court was very purposeful because he knew what happened. And he knew he could actually win that. And he did. But here, anybody who has watched that series or seen any aspect of Candace Owens in regard to this matter, you will come away with one of two conclusions in regards to what she thinks and how she feels about the Brigitte situation, which is one, she is most certainly 100% believes that's the truth, what she's saying, and that it is true. She went on Piers Morgan and bet him like 150 G's that it was true. And yeah, I mean, that's like a Monday's paycheck for Candace. It doesn't mean that much, but still. Second option. She is so good at wearing the mask of believing. She's so good at lying. She's so good at putting that forward that it'll be impossible to prove that she actually knew and that she was lying, because she is ferocious with her opinions and her point of view on that entire case. So it's going to be very difficult to win that. Why then am I bringing all of this up about the case? Well, that's where things get interesting. You see, the Macrons know that they cannot win that lawsuit. And they also know that Candace Owens has no interest in trying to settle out of court, that she wants to get to the truth. Now, I will say that perhaps things now with Charlie have shaken things up and changed things a little bit as far as her time and her interest. However, it still goes to show that, let's say, the Macrons are still in the hot seat over this because they know that Candace has won the public favor. I mean, as I said earlier, there are people all over the world that write into her, that watch her show, and there are people from France that write in and say, thank you for talking about this. It's been, subject of gossip and taboo conversation in France for years, but now, somebody's brought it to the main stage, and the implications that this has on the world stage, especially in terms of what it means for our children. The stakes are high. The implications are far-reaching. And one of those reasons is that it doesn't necessarily have to do with whether or not Brigitte is Jean-Michel Trogneau. This is not anything against trans people, the trans community, or being trans. It's not what it's about. When you know what the story is, you know that that woman was his teacher at 39 years old. He was 14. She was 39. That's grooming. That's also some choice other things that I'm not going to say on this platform, but you get my drift here. Also, when you watch the series, you realize that there are lots of other interesting international ties that also have to do with interfamilial relations and relations with minors. And it starts to paint this picture that's quite scary. Now, you throw into this mixed bag that a young, very politically popular podcaster is executed in broad daylight, not just in front of hundreds of people in person, But we all have cameras now. It's in front of the world, and they knew that. They could have picked any way out of 1,000 different ways to kill that man. They could have made it look like a suicide. They could have made it look like an accident. They could have made it look like any number of things, and it would have just slipped by. But they took out a man that was promoting free speech and dialogue that led to unification, not division, and they took him out in front of the people, in the neck, in the throat, in the voice. That's not an accident. That's not a coincidence. It's also not a coincidence that the man just happened to be Candace's little brother, best friend, however you want to see it. They were close. And maybe not as close as they were when they were with each other every day. But they both gotten married. They have children. He was the one that called over the Brigitte thing. People are coming out and saying against Candace right now, and I understand why, that it's too coincidental that these things are tying together. And I get it. It's justified. You know, you would want, if you're out there and you're lying and you're making these things up, then it's only gonna be the genius Shakespearean way to plot the story that all of your best interests just somehow end up intertwining and dovetailing together in the end. So I understand why some people are not buying it. I get that. However, also, you have not one, but two different nations that are, let's just say, known for being nefarious, who have very serious and very real political motive to silence Candace Owens. And not just Candace Owens, but the entire movement that has come out of the Brigitte thing that has now entered into the Charlie Kirk thing and become one massive global movement. We can't diminish the effect that this has had on people. There's a reason why her podcast is her solo podcast, after Daily Wire. In just not even a year and a half yet. The number one podcast in the world. She's at, 5, almost 6 million on YouTube right now, doing live shows for sometimes 5 days a week, with sponsorships raking in well into the 6 figures per episode. It's big time. There are people that literally set their clocks around watching her show every single day. Look at what's happened to the Conservative Party since this started. A party that literally a year ago, November election, a year ago, completely trounced the Democratic Party in the election and was riding higher and stronger than they've been since 2016. And I would argue even stronger than they were then. But just a year later, it is literally fractured in half and capsized. And is now the infighting within the Conservative Party between what might be neocons and Zionists and what is now known as the America Firsters. It's ugly. It's brutal. And regardless of any of this, we're still going to have elections in the future. How is a party divided going to beat a unified party? It's already going to be tough because regardless of, this is a second term for Trump, and the man's losing. You can tell the man's losing it. He's not quite at Biden level yet, but he's close. And I think we all feel like one way or another, he's not going to make it to the end of the term, either from mental health, physical health, or being impeached because of his absolute disaster by every standard. Disaster of a second term first year. So, the stakes are high in all of this mess. And Candace Owens, one female, black, independent podcaster, is right in the eye of the storm. And that means something, because just a year ago, there was a lot of talk about a half-black female not being accepted in America, not being voted for reasons that were not political, let's say. And there's truth to that. I'm not saying that it was the whole truth, because I don't believe that either. There's a lot of different complex issues that come into play there. But there's some truth to that. But right now, we have another young black female who has become the single most important and most sought after political voice in the world at this moment. And I'm not trying to say that the Brigitte or the Charlie or this whole situation, I'm not trying to be grandiose about it at all, nor am I trying to be hyperbolic with it. But the implications of what is actually behind these stories and what is happening, it's nothing short of global upheaval. It's that important. Because that was a moment on September 10th, very much like JFK, very much like 9/11, where we kind of stopped in time for a moment. And all of us, regardless of if you like Charlie or not, that's neither here nor there with this conversation, but in that moment, we all felt unsafety. We felt vulnerable, as we should, witnessing something like that. And a mere days after witnessing the slaughter of a young Ukrainian woman on a public train. A lot of heaviness that week. But regardless, the implications here are deep and far-reaching. And we don't know what will happen, but what we're seeing are conversations and movements that have the power and possibility to change the world. Because what we're seeing, it's one thing that Candace is absolutely correct about, is that, is this political? Sure. Is this international? Sure. Is this psychological? You bet. But ultimately, this is spiritual. This is a spiritual matter. Regardless if you individually have any kind of spiritual inclination in your life, the nature of this entire thing is spiritual. And there's a lot that can be said about that. And there's a lot that I will personally say as this series continues. But for now, we have to know that there is psychological manipulation and deception happening, psychological coercion, and there is a spiritual darkness that is over this entire mess. And that darkness is indicative of a much, much darker and deeper collective evil. Evil. After he was shot, many people waited to see what Candace Owens was going to say about it. She, understandably, didn't speak for a few days, so none of us knew what exactly was going to happen, what was going through her mind, what she may do. And I'm bringing that up to illustrate that those of us who do not believe that we are getting the truth from the Fed, from the government, about the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we knew it from minute one. The moment that they put up the two pictures of the alleged shooter and tried to convince us that these two people were the same person. These two photos with completely different facial features, these were the same person. The moment that they tried to convince us that this young man, who probably weighs 145 pounds soaking wet, somehow walked all that way and up those stairs with a hunting rifle with a scope and 30-06 stuffed into his skinny jeans. We knew it as soon as the older gentleman waddled and then was carried out of the site, his pants falling down around his ankles, screaming, "It was me, I did it," finding out that, oh, this guy actually has ties to the Boston bombing and 9/11. He's an Ashkenazi Jew, and oh, well, guess what? He's got child pornography on his home computer. What? Why was he doing that? How did he get there? And why did he later tell the authorities that while he didn't pull the trigger, he was there to distract while the actual killer did his business and got away? He was a decoy and admitted as much and said, "Yeah, I'm getting paid to be here." I'm bringing this up because all of us in this particular collective, we knew from minute one that this was off. Something is very fishy. And it very quickly escalated and became, okay, we are being lied to. Just straight up, they are lying to us. This has all of the hallmarks of a psychological operation. Nothing seems correct. What they're feeding us is clearly untrue. It is clearly deceptive. It is clearly manipulative. We are being lied to by the feds, by the government, by law enforcement, by the director of the FBI. We're being played. I'm sorry if maybe you particular are one of those people. I don't mean to be insulting. But anyone who has actually looked over and reviewed the details that were given, the official authorized story of the FBI, the American government, you can't possibly believe that the story that was given is true. So, this is why this event and Candace Owens are incredibly important, not just to the American people, all of us, the global population. This is a time of absolute radical change and transformation. And it can go a number of ways. But I hope and pray that we choose love over fear. And that we become committed to justice for all. Till next time.